Good morning, everyone. Welcome to God's Grace on Thee and Angel Wallace Productions. Today is Monday. It is the 6th of January of 2025. It is now 10:37 a.m. here in Reno, Nevada. Temperature is 41 degrees, but it feels like 47, so that's going to be a nice day. Let us begin with Chapter 9. We're going to continue on and learn all about the Bolsheviks. Recording to Hatton, Thursday, March 5th, 1998, 12:06 p.m., year 11, day 201. Quoting Part 21, Global Parasites, the All-Jewish Mark on Red Russia. In a world of completely organized territorial sovereignties, he, the Jew, has only two possible cities of refuge. He must either pull down the pillars of the whole national state system, or he must create a territorial sovereignty of his own. In Eastern Europe, Bolshevism and Zionism seem to grow side by side, not because the Jew cares for the positive side of radical philosophy, and not because he desires to be a partaker in Gentile nationalism or Gentile democracy, but because no existing Gentile system is ever anything but distasteful to him. And we shall now briefly interrupt the commentary which we have been making on the protocols to set at rest once and for all certain misstatements which are made for Gentile consumption. To learn what the Jewish leaders of the United States or any other country think, do not read their addresses to the Gentiles. Read their addresses to their own people. And on such matters as these, whether the Jew regards himself as destined to rule the world, whether he regards himself as belonging to a nation and race distinct from every other nation and race, whether he regards the Gentile world as the legitimate field of his exploitation by a lower moral method than is permissible among his own people, and whether he knows and shares the principles of the protocols on such matters as these. The only safe guide is to be the strongest indications that Bolshevism is Jewism, is that the Jewish press emphasizes so fiercely the alleged Gentilism at least two of the revolutionary notables. And it may be cruel to deny them, two among hundreds, but merely saying so cannot change Kerensky's nationality. His name is Adler. His father was a Jew and his mother a Jewess. Adler, the father, died, and the mother married a Russian named Kerensky, whose name the young child took. And among the radicals who employed him as a lawyer, among the forces that put him forward to drive the first nail into Russia's cross, among the soldiers who fought with him, his Jewish descent and character have never been doubted. Well, but there is Lenin, our Jewish publicists say. Lenin, the head of it all, the brains of it all, and Lenin is a Gentile. We've got you there. Lenin is a Gentile. Perhaps he is. But why do his children speak Yiddish? And why are his proclamations put forth in Yiddish? Why did he abolish the Christian Sunday and establish by law the Jewish Saturday Sabbath? Well, the explanation of all this may be that he married a Jewess. The fact is that he did. But another explanation may be that he himself is a Jew. Certainly he is not the Russian nobleman he has always claimed to be. The statements he has made about his identity thus far have been lies. The claim that he is a Gentile may be unfounded too. No one has ever doubted Trotsky's nationality. He is a Jew. His name is Bronstein, and recently the Gentiles were told that Trotsky had said he wasn't much of anything in religion. And that may be, but still, he must be something. Else why are the Russian Christian churches turned into stables, slaughterhouses, and dancing halls, while the Jewish synagogues remain untouched? And why are Christian priests and ministers made to work on the roads, while Jewish rabbis are left their clerical privileges? Trotsky may not be much of anything in religion, but he is a Jew nevertheless. This is not mere Gentile insistence that he shall be considered a Jew whether or no. It is straight Jewish teaching that he is and is considered by all Jewish authorities to be a Jew. An apology must be made here for repeating well-known facts, yet so many people are not even now aware of the true meaning of Bolshevism. At the risk of monotony, we shall cite a few of the salient facts. The purpose, however, is not alone to explain Russia, but to throw a warning light on conditions in the United States. The Bolshevik government, as it stood late this summer when the latest report was smuggled through to certain authorities, shows up the Jewish domination of the whole affair. It has changed very slightly since the beginning. We give only a few items to indicate the proportion. And it must not be supposed that the non-Jewish members of the government are Russian. Very few Russians have anything to say about their own country these days. The so-called dictatorship of the proletariat, in which the proletariat has nothing whatever to say, is Russian only in the sense that it is set up in Russia. It is not Russian in that it springs from or includes the Russian people. It is an international program of the protocols, which might be put over by a minority in any country and which is being given a dress rehearsal in Russia. It is not the economic experiment, so-called, that one objects to in Russia. It is not the fallacies, the sad delusion of the people. No, it is downright dirty immorality, the British nastiness of it all, and the line which the immorality and nastiness draws between Jew and Gentile. The horrible cruelty involved we will not deal with, leaving it merely with the explanation which has found utterance in the Jewish press that it may be that the Jew in Russia is taking an unconscious revenge for his centuries of suffering. But, asks some reader, how may we know that all this is true? Now, bearing in mind that we are speaking of Russia, not for the interest of the Russian situation at all, but to indicate the international character of those who are responsible for conditions there, and to identify them for the protection of the United States, we shall look at the evidence. There is, of course, the evidence brought to light by our own United States Senate and printed in a report of the Committee on the Judiciary. We do not wish to spend much time on this because we prefer in these articles to use the Jewish testimony instead of Gentile, but we shall pause long enough to show the nature of the testimony brought out by our own government. Now, Dr. George A. Simons, a clergyman in charge of an American congregation in Petrograd at that time the Bolshevik terror broke out, was a witness. Parts of his testimony are given here. There are hundreds of agitators who followed in the trail of Trotsky-Bronstein, having come over from the Lower East Side of New York. A number of us were impressed by the strange Yiddish element in his thing right from the start, and it soon became evident that more than half the agitators in the so-called Bolshevik movement were Yiddish. Senator Nelson, Hebrews? Dr. Simons, they were Hebrews, apostate Jews. I do not want to say anything against the Jews as such. I am not in sympathy with the anti-Semite movement, never have been, and do not ever expect to be. But I have a firm conviction that this thing is Yiddish, and that one of its bases is found in the east side of New York. Senator Nelson, Trotsky came over from New York during that summer, did he not? Dr. Simons, he did. Later, Dr. Simons said in December of 1918, out of 388 members, only 16 happened to be real Russians, and all the rest were Jews, with the exception possibly of one man who is a Negro from America who calls himself Professor Gordon, and 265 of this Northern Commune government that is now sitting in the old Smolny Institute came from the Lower East Side of New York, 265 of them. And I might mention this, that when the Bolsheviki came into power all over Petrograd, we at once had a predominance of Yiddish proclamations, big posters and everything in Yiddish. It became very evident that now that was to be one of the greatest languages of Russia, and the real Russians, of course, did not take very kindly to it. In the kill box, Hatton states, "Please recall from prior Jewish writings that Yiddish is not Hebrew. Yiddish is a language created for the self-styled parties who came to call themselves Jews and to suit the needs of the Talmud and be utilized in the protocols. It is much like using a code, as in the World War II, when native language was used and could not be deciphered. How much do you think, as a Russian, you might understand of Lakota Sioux? And by using the Talmud and the Yiddish, everyone, including the Hebrew-speaking Jews, could be fooled until it was too late to change horses." William Chapin Huntington, who was commercial attaché of the United States Embassy at Petrograd, testified, "In Russia, it is well known that 3/4 of the Bolshevik leaders are Jewish. There were some, not many, but there were some real Russians. And what I mean by real Russians is Russian-born and not Russian Jew." Now, Roger E. Simmons, Trade Commissioner connected with the United States Department of Commerce, also testified. An important anonymous witness, whom the committee permitted to withhold his name, told the same thing. The British White Book, Russia, Number 1, a collection of reports on Bolshevism in Russia, presented to Parliament by command of His Majesty, April 1919, contains masses of the same testimony from many sources, and all of them eyewitnesses. And in that very highly respected magazine, Asia, for February-March 1920, is an article which contains, among other important ones, these statements. The italics are ours. In all the Bolshevik institutions, the heads are Jews. The Assistant Commissar for Elementary Education, Grunberg, can hardly speak Russian. The Jews are successful in everything and obtain their ends. They know how to command and get complete submission. But they are proud and contemptuous towards everyone, which strongly incites the people against them. And at the present time, there is a great national religious fervor among the Jews. They see in the spread of revolution the fulfilling of the Scriptures. "Though I make an end of all the nations whither I have scattered thee, yet will I not make an end of thee." Now, if the Gentile proof were wanted, the files of the Dearborn Independent for a whole year would not begin to contain it. But Jewish proof is better. And there has been a strange vacillation in Jewish opinion concerning Bolshevism. At first, it was hailed with delight. There was no concealment whatever in the early days of the new regime as to part which Jewry had in it. Public meetings, interviews, special articles poured forth, in which very valuable elements of truth were mingled. There was no attempt at concealment of names. And then the horror of the things began to take hold upon the world. And for just a breathing space, Jewish opinion fell silent. There was a spasmodic denial or two, and then a new burst of glorification. The glorification continues within Judaism itself, but it now carries on the Gentile side of its face a very sad expression labeled persecution. We have lived to see the day when to denounce Bolshevism is to persecute the Jews. In the American Hebrew for September the 10th of 1920, an article appears which not only acknowledges and explains the part which the Jew plays in the present unrest and upheaval, but justifies it, and justifies it, curiously enough, by the Sermon on the Mount. The writer says that the Jew evolved organized capitalism with its working instrumentality, the banking system. Now, this is very refreshing in view of the numerous Jewish denials of the economic faith. One of the impressive phenomena of the impressive time is the revolt of the Jew against the Frankenstein, which his own mind conceived and his own hand fashioned. If this is true, why is Jewish organized capital with its working instrumentality, the banking system, supporting the revolt? That achievement, referring to the Russian overthrow, destined to figure in history as the overshadowing result of the World War, was largely the outcome of Jewish thinking, of Jewish discontent, of Jewish effort to reconstruct. This, of course, requires proof that the constructive phase has appeared. The implication here is sheer propaganda. The protocols, however, have a reconstructive program. Now, we have not reached it as yet in this series of articles, but it is clearly outlined in the protocols. Destroy Gentile society and then reconstruct it according to our plans. Hatton states in the kill box. And keep in mind, there are two kinds of people by Jewish demand, Jews and Gentiles, period. Now read carefully. What Jewish idealism and Jewish discontent have so powerfully contributed to accomplish in Russia? The same historic qualities of the Jewish mind and heart are tending to promote in other countries. In the kill box, Hatton states, we are stopped here because the worst has happened. Fingers on the wrong keys, and sometimes I think it is suitable to laugh at self and then move on. Sometimes we have almost a full page of this alien writing, and like all things mysterious, it is not mystical, and once discovered, it is no longer a mystery. So try it again, please. So let's read that again. What Jewish idealism and Jewish discontent have so powerfully contributed to accomplish in Russia? Just what was that? And just how did it powerfully contribute? And why are Jewish idealism and Jewish discontent always linked together? Well, if you read the protocols, it is all very clear. Jewish idealism is a destruction of Gentile society and the erection of Jewish society. Was it not so in Russia? Yiddish proclamations on the walls? The ancient Hebrew in the schools? Saturday substituted for Sunday and the rabbis respected while the priests were put to work on the roads. All powerfully contributed to by murder, rapine, theft, and starvation. Our author is more candid than he realizes. He calls this linked idealism and discontent the historic qualities of the Jewish mind. The Dearborn Independent is indebted to him for this clear confirmation of what it has been saying for some time. But even that is not all. These same historic qualities of the Jewish mind, which contributed so powerfully to accomplish in Russia, the Red Terror still existing there, are declared by this author to be tending to promote the same sort of thing in other countries. He says so in many words, tending to promote in other countries. But we knew that. The only difference is that when Gentiles said it, they were overwhelmed with the wildest abuse. But now a pro-Jewish writer says it in a leading Jewish publication. And he says it apologetically. Listen to him. It was natural that discontent in other parts of the world should find expression in overemphasis of issues and overstatement of aims. What discontent? Jewish discontent, of course. Discontent with what? With any form of Gentile rule. And how did it find expression? In overemphasis of issues and overstatement of aims. And what were these issues and aims? To bring the Bolshevik Revolution to the United States. No, they did not overstate their aims. They exactly stated them. And then they simply selected the wrong country. That's all. Hatton in the kill box. Sorry, but so far it is certainly the very country. Bolshevism never got further than the pawn shop and burglar's fence idea. The proof of this traffic in stolen property is going to drive some people into hiding before long. It will be a long time before America will be taking orders in Yiddish, or American women will be giving up their jewels to the chosen race. in the kill box, Hatton. Yes, it might have even taken another 78 years, but it has all but come to pass. However, that happens to be only the most recent acknowledgement that has come to hand. It is significant for its confession that Jewish discontent was tending to promote in other countries what it has so powerfully contributed to accomplish in Russia. And with such a link between the American Hebrew, Russian Bolshevism, and the protocols, there are still Jewish publicists with the crust to say that only crazy people could see the connection. Only blind people will not see it. But that is only a minor connection. This series of articles does not rest on anything so accidental as the Jewish New Year's apology for Bolshevism in the Great Hebrew issue of September the 25th, 1920. End of quoting. Well, now I really am in trouble. It seems there were 2 chapters left in the book and we had miscounted. We have a choice, however, of doing it now or doing it in the night. And I think intelligence will prevail. I believe, however, that we need a new file reference. Stop the long faces, readers. Rejoice at finding truth, for there is no longer fear in knowing. It is the ignorance that becomes problematic. I am asked by those who think themselves to be Jewish, what in the world do we call ourselves? Humans and Americans, or Italians, or Greek, or Russian, or whatever you choose. If you are not this kind of Jew, then for goodness sakes, call yourself a Gentile. What's the big deal? A name doesn't do a thing. Sticks and stones may break your boat, but names will never hurt you unless you let them. Readers, facts are facts, and all the wishing in the world will not change a breath of it. The facts are that the world has been handed a bill of goods. And what have you been had? So what? Are you going to just wallow and cower in the holes allowed to you? Get up off your assets and stop the nonsense. Thank you. Salut.